Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. And as always, we give peace and salutations unto the elect, you sincere brothers and sisters coming back to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, Yahweh, Bahasham, in the name of Yahweh Shai, the name of the only begotten Son of the Most High, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, who is our mediator, our high priest, and our way back to the Father. All right, and in these latter days, through his blood, which is the only way we can be brought back to the Father, is through his blood. All right, also we have received the Holy Spirit of promise. All right, the understanding of the volume of the book. All right, and ultimately, as we have been comforted, we comfort you. And through the new song, all right, the elect of the nation of Israel will come back to the understanding of the names of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, who they are, and ultimately be able, all right, to be comforted by the understanding of what's written in the volume of the book, as there have been many myths, fables, and false doctrines, dogma associated with the Bible for years. All right, and in today's lesson, I wanted to do a response to this video uploaded by the elder brother Gabar Yahawada of the GMS Hawaii camp. All right, as you can see his page here, GMS Hawaii Ba. Subscribe to the elder's page and be edified. The title of this video that I'm responding to today: pre-flood conditions / pre-fire conditions. All right, and we know, pursuant to the Holy Scriptures, we can read about the pre-flood conditions in the book of Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay, and if you want to get insight into the pre-flood conditions on the earth, all you have to do is look at the pre-fire conditions, because those two conditions are synonymous. As our King Solomon said in spirit here in Ecclesiastes 3:15, that which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been, and God requireth that which is past. All right, let's get it in the NLT. All right, like history merely repeats itself. Okay, it says what is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. Okay, so when you're reading Genesis, the 6th chapter, all right, an example of the environment on the earth is here in Luke 17:26. It says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. So the condition on the earth, all right, before the flood came, is going to be the same condition on the earth before the Lord comes and brings fire. Okay, and if that which is then is now, okay, ultimately the world we're looking at today mimics the world pre-flood, because we are living in pre-fire times. And if that's true, where are these fallen angels? Where's all of this mythology and crap that you individuals have associated with this story? Which we'll get into that. All right. But again, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the sons of men. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given unto marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Okay. So likewise, also in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But the same day Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone. All right, which brimstone is something that is formed on earth. All right, it says from heaven, and destroy them all. Okay, so we know what took place before Sodom was destroyed: freakism, perversions, sexual perversions, the same thing that we're seeing now. Okay, So again, before the flood came, they were eating, drinking, and being merry. As a matter of fact, when you get Revelation, the 18th chapter, okay, in the 21st verse, it says, "And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, the people, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee." Okay? "And no craftsman or whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more at all. And the sound of a millstone, all right, shall be heard no more at all in thee." And this represents, the flourishing economy, the parades, whether it be pride parades, parades with people marching for, proud or agendas that are not associated with righteousness. Okay. The New Year's, all of these idols being, uplifted and worshipped here, it's not going to be found anymore at all. It says, "And the light of a candle shall no more shine at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be no more heard at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." So it talks about the voice of the bridegroom and the bride, symbolizing partying, eating, drinking, being merry, making money. All of these things are going to be taken down at the coming of Yahweh Shai. Okay. So in this lesson, what I'm going to do is get into Genesis, the 6th chapter, from the perspective of what King Solomon wrote in Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter. Because when you read, the end of Wisdom of Solomon from around, 12, 13, 14, all the way to the end of the, Wisdom of Solomon, he gives you history and insight into some very, interesting points in our history. He gives you the insight of what happened in Egypt as you read towards the end. But here in Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter, he gives you insight on the pre-flood conditions that are associated with Genesis, the 6th chapter, all right, where you see the corruption of the sons of God, okay, which there were other nations on the earth, all right. A notable nation that was on the earth during this time was what? The sons of Cain, okay, the sons and daughters of Cain, all right, which are associated with the wicked one, or on earth, as you read what's going on in Genesis, the 6th chapter, all right. And before we get Genesis, the 6th chapter, we must understand that it's following, all right, Genesis, the 5th chapter, okay, where you have Adam's descendants, all right, through Seth, because Abel was slew, giving you the lineage, all right, of the sons of God. And it gives you notable names of men who stuck to traditions and did well in righteousness, all right, while the majority of our people fell off. These are the names you look to be associated with those who stuck to the script. Now, as you get down to the end, you have Noah, which was a prophecy surrounding him, was that ultimately he was going to comfort those who stuck to the right traditions, all right, concerning the labor that they put in to stick to the script. Okay. Now, Genesis, the 5th chapter, leads to Genesis, the 6th chapter. And for some reason, many of our people like to associate Genesis, the 6th chapter, with a genealogy of angels who had sex with women. Okay. And ultimately led to another race outside of which came from Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their wives. Okay. Well, that's not scriptural. All of the nations on the planet Earth, all right, stem from the unions made between Noah, his wife, Shem, his wife, all right, Ham and his wife, Japheth and his wife. That's how the earth was repopulated, and all of the nations on the planet Earth stem from those unions. Now, again, make sure you check out this elder's video, pre-flood conditions, pre-fire conditions, because we are living in the pre-fire conditions right now. We're going to show you that they match up perfectly with the pre-flood conditions. All right. Because, all right, things got out of hand. Now, again, this chapter has been associated with many myths, but through the Holy Spirit, may you get understanding, as we have done many videos on this. All right. I also did a video going into Genesis, the 5th chapter, that any of the righteous die in a flood, explaining that, you know, we know Methuselah was the last before Noah. Methuselah passed in the year of the flood. So all of the righteous had passed away and went back to the spiritual realm. So the flood that came up on the earth didn't touch any of the righteous, which Noah was the last of that generation. And what we're going to show you is that the Lord used him as a means to forward righteousness into the world after the flood. Now, as a matter of fact, all right, when you get Sirach, the 44th chapter and the 17th verse, it says, Noah was found perfect and righteous, and in the time of wrath he was taken in exchange for the world. Therefore was he left as a remnant unto the earth when the flood came. Okay. So again, in the time of wrath, Noah was saved. All right. And what did it say? As we'll show you, he found grace, but he was left as a remnant. So Noah mimics the remnant, and the remnant mimic Noah in a sense that before a great judgment, all right, he was in a right spirit. So as they will, okay, sticking to the script amongst a great rebellion, because before the flood, things got real bad. Okay. And before we get into Wisdom of Solomon, want to hit a few points, and we'll start here in Genesis 6:1. It says, and it came to pass, right after you read Genesis, the 5th chapter, giving you the lineage of Adam, you go to Genesis 4, it gives you the lineage of Cain. Genesis 5 is the lineage of Adam through Seth, right? Just like you have Jacob and Esau became two separate nations. Well, all right, you had Cain and Abel, but then you had Seth. Okay. You had Seth, and through Seth came the righteous lineage associated with those who were supposed to keep the righteous way. Now, what happened is, as the chosen seed is prone to do, all right, they got mingled among the heathen and learned their works. And let's get it. Genesis 6:1. And it came to pass that when men began to multiply upon the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Now, again, the scriptures say history repeats itself. We can read about this with King Solomon. We can read about this in the book of Nehemiah. You can read about this on various occasions where Israelites, the holy seed, made marriages with heathen and took on their customs. All right. This is basically the first example of that. All right. Now, let's get this in the NLT. It says, the sons of God saw the beautiful women, and they took any they wanted as their wives. Okay. And what happened is, ultimately, the culture, the legacy, the lineage that the sons of God were to uphold through sin. All right. Basically, they got among the heathen and threw those ways away. Okay. Took on lesser ways, just as our people have always been prone to do. And it says, the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Letting you know this, speaking about men on earth. All right. He is flesh. Okay. Meaning he struggles with the flesh. Okay. The Lord's plan for the holy seed was to be immortal, but through envy of the devil came what? Decay. All right. Through Adam's sin, which started with Eve. All right. We now have to deal with what? Flesh, temptation. Right. So as it says here in 2nd Esdras, the 3rd chapter, after it talks about As a matter of fact, speaking of Adam, Genesis, second Esdras chapter 3:7, it says, unto him, Adam, gave us thou commandment to love thy way, which he transgressed, and immediately thou appointed death in him, and in his generations, of who came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number. Okay, the elect, all right, the holy seed. Okay, and every people walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee, and despised thy commandments. And again, in a process of time, thou broughtest to flood upon those that dwelt in the world, and destroyed them. And it came to pass in every one of them, that as death was to Adam, okay, so was the flood unto these. Nevertheless, one of them, one of the sons of God, left us, namely Noah, with his household, of who came all righteous men. So when you go here, keep in mind what you just read. All right. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, basically giving you the understanding, because let's get the book of Psalms. Okay. 106. Let's get Psalms 106, and we'll jump to 34. They did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them, but were mingled among the heathen, and learned their works, and served their idols, which were a snare unto them. And this is what you're going to find out, is that what happened here in Genesis, the 6th chapter, is something, all right, in a narrative that you continuously see concerning this holy seed as you go throughout the volume of the book. All right, they would turn from the way of the Heavenly Father and bow to idols, which were a snare unto them, and sacrifice their sons and daughters unto devils. Keep that in mind. And shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and daughters, who they sacrificed unto idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. Thus they were defiled with their own works, and went a whoring after their own inventions. Therefore was the wrath of the Lord kindled against his people, in so much that he abhorred his own inheritance. All right. And this is not the first time that this happened. This is going into history of what happened when the Lord told us to destroy, all right, all of the Canaanites and the other ites out of the land. But Jake didn't do it, and eventually started mingling with them, making marriages with them. And what happened was a big mess came. Okay. Israel is prone to do this. You get the book of Nehemiah, the 13th chapter. Let's get that real quick. Nehemiah, the 13th chapter, and the 24th verse. All right. 23rd, in those days also saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod. And you're not supposed to make marriages with heathen. Heathen are supposed to come up under the order of a concubine. Okay, because a marriage is dealing with the joining of houses, and that should be done between your Israelite, all right, wife, all right, okay. Even the inheritance was so strict that tribe, for certain inheritance purposes, couldn't marry outside of their tribe, okay, when it came to land inheritance. But here you see the Jews married the wives of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab, and their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. So what happened here? All right, you had the holy seed mingling among the heathen out of order, okay, and what? Learning their works, okay, and Nehemiah contended with them, cursed them out. All right. But again, this is a narrative that you see throughout the volume of the book concerning this holy seed, is that they would get among the heathen and cling to the customs of the heathen, in particular through, making marriages with their women. OK, this is the first. All right. Example of this in the Holy Scriptures. And when you get Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay, that which is then is now. So again, let's read this again. Genesis 6:2. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, of which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, but that he is also flesh. So letting you know, this is not talking about angels falling down, okay, from heaven. Again, there's different classes of the sons of God. Sons of God in heaven, and you have sons of God on earth, which is associated with obedience. All right. And the place where it was said unto them, ye are not the sons of the living power, there shall it be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living power. That's the book of Hosea. Okay. The first chapter. So my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. All right. There were giants in the earth in those days. And again, we always go into this, but briefly, let's get this a point that I forgot to bring out. All right. Now we know the word napayal, all right, says giants or Nephilim. Now we know it means to fall or fallen ones. Okay. But let's get this here. All right. It says, let's see here. Let's get right here. All right. It says, the etymology of this word is uncertain. Some have compared napayal or compared which gig and cast render great, large, and body, but this is incorrect. Okay, it's not so much talking about large in body, though men were bigger before the flood, of course, right? For it means excellent, noble, skillful. Okay, I prefer with Hebrew interpreters falling on, attacking. All right, so that napayal is of intransitive signification. All right. Those who used to interpret the passage in Genesis of the fall of the angels were accustomed to render, all right, napayalayam, fallers, rebellers, or apostates. And both are true. Okay, you had the noble, holy seed, all right, fall from their grace and become apostates. What does the word apostate mean? All right, let's get etymology online. Okay, let's get the word apostate. What is an apostate? One who forsakes his religion or faith. All right. Defection, rebellion. Okay. And this is ultimately what happened here in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay. It also says bully or tyrant. Okay. So Jake had become corrupt. The holy seed had become corrupt. Okay. And we also know the root of it, napal, means to fall. Okay. To fall, prostrate, and they did, as we'll show you, they prostrated before idols, and they fell away from their origin, which was to be the leaders. Okay, they kept not their first estate. Okay, and ultimately, as you see here, let's get this Genesis 6:4. Let's get this in the NLT. It says, in those days, or sometime after, giant Nephilites lived on the earth. For whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. So what people do is they say, well, see, this means that giants came from heaven, had sex with women, and their offspring became, all right, tyrants and bullies. And, you know, you have this race of people who survived the flood who are still here today. All right. And it's madness. Again, these were the sons of God. Just like today you have Jake, who are the famous heroes and warriors of this time. All right. But they're going off. Okay. Some of their mother are heathen. Okay. But the common theme with Jake is that they're going off, man. You see that? And to get some insight to this very verse, let's get the book of Baruch. All right, the 3rd chapter. All right. And we'll just start at 1 and jump down. It says, O Lord Almighty, God of Israel, from the depth of our troubled, weary souls, we cry out to you. Hear us, O Lord, and have mercy on us because we have sinned against you. Okay. And let's jump here to verse 4. O Lord Almighty, God of Israel, hear our prayer. We are no better off than dead. Our ancestors sinned against you, the Lord their God. They refused to obey you, and we are suffering the consequences of their sin. Forget the sinful things that our ancestors did in the past, and at a time like this, think only on your power and reputation. All right. And you can continue to read this, but it's talking about our ancestors, right? So let's jump down. Okay. To verse 24. O Israel, how great is the universe in which God dwells. How vast is all that he possesses. There is no end to it. There is no way to measure how we ride or how high it is. Here in early times, the famous giants were born, a mighty race skilled in war. But God did not choose them to be his people or show them the way of knowledge. They died out during the flood because they had neither understanding nor insight. See that? They were going off, but the Lord left pursuant to 2nd Esdras. Okay. Let's see here. Chapter 3 and 8. And every people walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee and despised thy commandments. And again, in the process of time, thou broughtest the flood upon those that dwelt in the world and destroyed them. And it came to pass that as death was to Adam, so was the flood unto these. Nevertheless, one of this lineage, namely, you left named Noah, with his household, who came all righteous men. Okay. And again, let's go to another precept here in the book of Sirach, the 16th chapter in the GNT. And what is it? The heading, God's punishment on sinners. Okay. It says, a large family is nothing to be desired if the children are worthless. Godless children are nothing to be proud of, no matter how many children you have. Don't look on them with pride unless they fear the Lord. Okay, now, as you jump down, let's go to verse 4. A city's population may grow because of the wisdom of one person. Okay, and that's what happened with Noah, while a whole tribe of lawless people disappears. I have seen much things many times and have heard of even more striking examples. The Lord's flaming anger will break out against a small gathering of sinners or a disobedient man. He did not forgive those ancient giants who rebelled against him. Okay? They died in the flood. That flood wasn't like an eternal drowning, but that was a judgment that we always hear about and read about unto this day. Okay, he did not forgive those ancient giants who rebelled against him, confident of their own strength. He detested the arrogance of the people, all right, among whom Lot lived. So again, this is going into those same examples, just like we read in the book of Luke, the 17th chapter. Okay, it talked about what? The judgment of what happened, all right, at the time of Noah, and the judgment that happened, all right, at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah with Lot. Okay, so you have the same pre-flood behavior and pre-fire behavior. Okay, he detested the arrogance of the people among whom Lot lived and did not spare them. Okay, so again, before that, it says he did not forgive those ancient giants. Again, you see that word giant, and all it means is, the renowned ones who fell from their grace, man. All right, the mighty men of old. Okay, the sons of God. Okay, who became foolish. Okay, point blank, period. Okay, so as we go to Genesis, the sixth chapter, it says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination and the thoughts of his heart were only evil continually." So what you saw was wickedness. Everybody's imagination, just as today you see the imagination, everybody's mindset is on self-destruct, pride, arrogance, ignorance, rebellion, especially these people with these podcasts. I mean, goodness gracious, Jake is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse, man. Both the men and the women, right? And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth. Again, this is speaking of the judgment of men on earth, because the holy seed was created to rule and govern the earth under Adam. But there was a way passed down that they rebelled against by what? We're going to show you, give you more insight through Solomon's writings, all right, and record, that they just went off and bowed to idols. It says, "And the Lord said, I will destroy man of whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast. Everything was corrupted, and creeping thing and fowls of the air, for repented me that I have made them." Okay? "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." See, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Now, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. See that? So the Lord had mercy, all right, upon Noah. Okay? Noah was, which he came from that righteous lineage, which Enoch was of, Methuselah. So he had the breakdown. So the Lord used him to continue righteousness in the earth while a great destruction was coming in the form of a flood. Verse 13 says, "And the God said unto Noah," showing you Noah got the prophecy, "the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth." And again, the elder brother goes in on some of the pre-flood conditions, and he used Chat GPT, which I'll pull up here. Okay, it says, before the flood, I asked, what were the conditions on earth before the flood? Okay, in the Bible, before the flood came, the conditions on the earth are described as increasingly corrupt, violent, morally degenerate, right? Human wickedness was great. Humanity had become deeply sinful. People's thoughts and intentions were constantly evil. This is the world we are living in today. And again, you see the sons of God, the sons and daughters of God, right? The chosen seed doing complete wickedness. But just as it says here in Philippians 2:15, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. See, that's speaking of the elect. Among all of the wickedness that our people are doing, we want to stand out, and that's what Noah did. He stood out, and the Lord used him as a vessel, in a wooden vessel, to what? Survive the flood. Okay, so again, pre-flood conditions, violence filled the earth. All right, it says violence, possibly including murder. We see that everywhere. It's rapped about. It's in the movies. It's in the games. Oppression. We don't even have to get into that. General lawlessness was widespread, suggest a breakdown of social order. And look at the world we're living in. Okay? Again, if that which is then is now, where are those giants at? Where are those fallen angels going and getting coochie? No. All right. It's the holy seed that is going around living like complete beasts as they are following the ways of the heathen, leaving their leadership role. All right. Which ultimately the goal of the Lord was to use his holy people to teach all humanity how to live. And through that righteous way that they would establish, the earth will be kept like Adam was supposed to keep the garden, watch and keep the garden. All right. Well, ultimately, he was a priest. And what does a priest do? Administer the law. You see? And it says in verse, it says corruption spread globally. And I looked up on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. Genesis 6:12. Corruption. Okay, let's look up the word corrupt. Having or showing a willingness to act dishonestly in return for money. That's the majority of the people you see on TV that have made it. Right? The presidents, the government, everybody's been bribed out. Hell, the technocrats have bought out America. Okay, the small hats. Right? Dishonest, dishonorable, unscrupulous. Okay? Unprincipled, untrustworthy, deceitful, double dealing, corruptible, bribable. And this is the environment we see on the planet Earth, man. Okay. Corruption globally spread through this whore, Babylon. Not just humans, but all flesh had become corrupt, possibly implying even the animals or ecosystems were affected. And it's not that the world we see now. As a matter of fact, let's get the book of Habakkuk real quick, and we'll get to Solomon's writings to end it off. But let's get Habakkuk, the second chapter. I mean, this whole chapter describes the very thing that we're witnessing now as well. Right? Verse 17, for the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and the spoil of beasts which made them afraid. The spoil of beast which made them afraid. And because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land and the city and all that dwell therein. And then it goes into idol worship, because that's what this all falls upon. All right. Idol worship. Isaiah 24:5. The earth is also defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, and broken the everlasting covenant. Okay, so everything is corrupted. Okay, you'll ask, well, why did the Lord kill the sheep, the goats, the lambs, the animals? Well, everything was corrupted. Okay, everything was corrupted. Okay, look at the world we live in now. Everything is corrupted. All of the animals, all of the plants, the ecosystems are destroyed. Okay, this is what sin and rebellion against that righteous order leads to. Okay. Then it goes the sons of God and the daughters of men, the holy seed going left. Okay. It says a mysterious and controversial passage, and interpreted variously as angels mating with humans, which is not possible. Royal tyrants abusing power, or divine beings, all right, corrupting creation. And the elect are divine beings. Okay, on the earth in human bodies, but guess what? They went off. They had to struggle with the flesh. Okay, and see, it says the union produced in the Nephilim, often seen as giants or mighty men of renown. So this is the common understanding, is that ultimately the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men produced a race of people called the Nephilim. Well, my question is, where are they at now? What role do they play in prophecy? Okay, the Edomites are the ones who are ruling and doing all of this evil. It's not a bunch of people who are half lizard, the Anunnaki, and all of this garbage that you all have tried to link with the Bible. It's the sons of Adam through Seth, all right, going off. Okay, this further symbolizes a perversion of God's intended order. Okay, God's grief and decision, all right, is that ultimately he wanted to bring a flood. God expressed sorrow over the state of creation. His grief led to the decision to judge the earth by sending a flood, but Noah stood out. Amid global corruption, Noah remained faithful. He and his family were chosen to survive the flood and repopulate the earth. Okay, so that's that. Okay, that's that. So what we're going to do is get into the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter, and show you that he is giving you the history in this chapter. As you can see, the title of it, Wooden Idols Compared with Noah's Wooden Boat. Because just as the Lord used Noah to build a boat out of wood and all of these things that were on the earth, men took those same elements, those same that same wood and made idols out of it back in that time. Okay, and idol worship is the beginning of all perversion, right? In the same way, all right, this is in the GNT, in the GNT, in the GNT, right? In the same way, a man getting ready to sail on the raging sea will call for help from a piece of wood that is not as strong as the ship he is about to board. Okay. So the people were bowing to pieces of wood. They were making idols out of wood. Okay, which is one of the first forms of rebellion. Now, the scriptures tell you that in the book of Genesis, the 4th chapter, right? Let's see here. With dealing with the lineage of Cain, Genesis 4:22, and Zillah, she also bare Tubal Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. So the seed of Cain started to make weapons and idols and things graven from, wood, stone, brass, iron. Right? As a matter of fact, let's ask, all right, our man here. Was that Genesis 4:22? Let's see. Can you explain, for was he making weapons and idols? Because remember, Cain's lineage represented the wicked one. All right, disobedience. So it makes sense that the sons of God who were on the earth at the same time that the sons of Cain were on the earth, okay, just as we are on the earth with the sons of Esau today, all right, that Jake picked up some of those destructive ways because the sons of Cain were known as tyrants, all right, the murderers, thieves, okay. They practice patriotism, martial waging war on we weren't doing that. The sons of Adam through Seth, we didn't need weapons, but we picked up those ways, all right, through following after the ways of the heathen, which is a common theme in the Bible dealing with this chosen seed. So it says, who was Tubal Cain, a descendant of Cain's 7th generation? Okay. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, let's get the book of Jude real quick. Let's get Jude. Jude. Yep. Jude verse 14. And Enoch also the 7th from Adam. All right. When you read this in the GNT, right, it says, Enoch, who lived in the 7th generation after Adam, prophesied about these people. All right. So Enoch was even prophesying because the sons of God were going left. But again, we see Tubal Cain is also the 7th generation from Adam. So Tubal Cain was on the earth at the same time as Enoch. And when you get into in the grand scheme of things, Enoch was delivered from some crazy situation that was happening on earth to the point he was beamed up. So again, you can tie that to the very, the deliverance that we're going to have as this man who's been blessed with the sword is losing his mind. Okay. But again, the 7th generation from Adam, all right, descendant of Cain, right? The 7th generation. So him and Enoch had to live around that same time, right? It says, the son of Lamech and Zillah, described as a instructor and forger of every artificer in brass and iron. This means he was a metal worker, possibly the first in human to forge tools or weapons from bronze and iron. What was he making? The text does not say exactly, but here's a phrase, every artificer. Now, what is an artificer? A skilled craftsman or inventor. Point blank period, man. Okay. Agricultural tools, plows, hammers, tools, weapons. Many scholars believe Tubal Cain's metal work likely included weapons, sword, knives, spears. This fits the thematically Cain's line marked by violence. Cain murdered Abel. Lamech boasts in killing in Genesis 4:23. His name is linked to Cain. All right, but there you go. All right. The text does not directly say idol making. However, later traditions, commentators, such as certain church fathers, speculated that early metal work also led to idol making. Wisdom of Solomon 13 through 14, which you asked about earlier, speaks of idols made from wood and metal. Okay, there you go. So going back to Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter, okay, let's read it again. In the same way, man getting ready to sail on a raging sea will call for help from a piece of wood that is not as strong as the ship he is about to abroad. Someone designed the ship out of a desire for profit, and a craftsman built it with skill. But it is your care, O Father, that steers it. You gave it a safe path, all right, through the waves of the sea. Okay, but people at this time, as he's going into the origin of idol worship, right, he's giving you a similar to it. Says, people may go to the sea even if they have no skill, because you can save them from any danger. It is your will that the things you have made by your wisdom should be put to use. Okay, and so people can cross the sea in a boat and come safely to land because they trust in their lives to that small piece of wood. This was how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants was dying away. Okay. The hope of the world escaped on such a boat under your guidance and left the world a new generation to carry on the human race. Okay. A blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive. You see that? But a curse is on an idol made by human hands. So when you put it all together, what can you conclude by reading what you've just read so far? All right, that this proud race of giants that we've been reading about, okay, the mighty men of ancient times, all right, who were foolish and went off, just like you have Jake today, mighty but foolish, all right, the renowned men of this age, all right, but they're going off. They're involved in all kind of madness. They're tied into idol worship, and Esau makes sure, all right, that the best of the best in this world, according to who makes it in his world, are involved in all of these practices. But again, this is how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants was dying away. Okay, and again, we went into that word giant. Okay, we went into it. Okay, again, it can mean fallen, as we always go into. All right. But Nepal, all right, a feller, a bully, a tyrant, okay, a giant. But again, as you can see here, some say great or large in body, but this is incorrect, for it means excellent, noble, skillful. All right, the holy seed. Okay. Excellent, noble, skillful. Okay. And this is speaking of your forefathers. As you read this story, you're reading about your forefathers, man, and what happened with them on earth, man. You're not reading about another race that stemmed from an angel and a woman, all right, having a baby. Okay. Get that mythology out of your mind and wake up. Okay. Verse 7. Okay, let's read it again. This is how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants was dying away. The hope of the world escaped on such a boat under your guidance and left the world a new generation to carry on the human race. A blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive. See, righteousness survived through Noah, going back to where we were. Okay. As a matter of fact, Genesis 7:1, where you read about the flood, it said, the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for in thee have I seen righteousness before me in this generation. Of every clean beast shalt thou take to thee by the 7, male and female, and the beasts that are not clean. You see what I'm saying? So the understanding, let's get Genesis 7 and 8, and let's get it in the NLT. It says, with them are various kinds of animals, those approved for eating and for sacrifice, and those that were not. So the understanding of what was clean and unclean to eat goes back to Adam, and it was passed down, and Noah was used to continue it. Noah was used to continue the sacrifice. When the flood subsided, immediately, all right, in Genesis the 8th chapter, in the 20th verse, and Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, all right, and took every clean beast and offered burnt offerings. So the what was done under the Levitical priesthood had already been. Okay, it was just something that wasn't written. It was just a way understood, and there were only certain Israelites, certain of the sons of God, who kept this particular way. This is how we have it today, through these righteous acts and these sacrifices made by our forefathers, all right, of the times of old. This was a sacrifice. Could you imagine? There was a question that came up, of all of the great men in the Bible, which, if you could choose 5, which would you want to speak to? And I was like, woo, Noah would definitely be one of them. Noah would definitely be one of them. Of course, everybody's going to choose Yahweh Shai, but I believe the question said outside of Yahweh Shai, because that line would just be too long, right? But Noah would definitely be one of the ones that I would want to talk to, Let's see here. Ibar as well, Eber, but anyway, that could be a game, brothers, a conversation brothers have amongst each other. But again, where were we? Let's go back to Wisdom of Solomon. Okay. 14 and 7, a blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive, but a curse is on an idol made by human hands. A curse is also on the one who makes it, because he works on this perishable thing and calls it a god. See, they were calling idols gods. Okay. This is Solomon writing about this history. Ungodly people in these ungodly things that they make are equally hated by God, who will punish both the things made and the people who made them. Okay. The MOTB is an idol. The jab was an idol, is an idol. Okay. And so God's judgment will fall on pagan idols, because even though they are made from something God created, they became horrible things that trap the souls of foolish people. Foolish people, man. All right. And we were once foolish. Okay. Let's get the book of Salakia. Let's get the book of, let's see here. There we go. Titus 3:3. For we ourselves were sometimes foolish, disobedient, all right, deceived, serving diverse lusts and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful and hating one another. Okay. And we were foolish, man. Okay. Just as our forefathers were. Going back, okay, it says, God's judgment, Wisdom of Solomon 14 and 11, will fall on pagan idols, because even though they are made from something God created, they became horrible things that trap the souls of foolish people, man. Most sexuality, eating of unclean things. Again, the sons of God understood what to eat and what not to eat. All right. There's supposedly a camp teaching that Noah and the sons of God were eating swine because the Mosaic law wasn't around. Again, the law was given unto Adam. Adam was given a commandment to love the way of righteousness, but it wasn't written down. So a lot of you guys are very entry level when it comes to the understanding of these scriptures, and you just need to sit down and listen to the men of the Lord, man. And we don't say this out of pride, but clearly you guys are just uncouth and when it comes to the nasty work, man. Okay? Of breaking down these scriptures, man. The origins of adultery. Okay, what are the origins of adultery? Sexual immorality began when idols were invented. They have corrupted human life ever since they were first made. Idols have not always existed, nor will they exist forever. It was human pride that brought them into the world, and that is why a quick end has been planned for them. Okay? So he just goes into, once there was a father who was overwhelmed with grief at the untimely death of his child. So he made an image of that child who had been suddenly taken from him. He then honored a dead human being as a god and named and handed on secret rituals and ceremonies to those that were under his authority. As time went on, this ungodly custom became stronger. Finally, it became a law, and idols were being worshipped at the command of powerful rulers. All right, Jake did this. Heathen did this. But again, this is a heathenistic practice. Okay, as a matter of fact, that's what we'll do. Wisdom of Solomon 14 through... So I typed here in Chat GPT, can you explain Wisdom of Solomon 14, 15 through 21? Can this custom be linked with other customs in history? Yes, Wisdom of Solomon 14, 15 through 21 describes the origin of adultery through customs of honoring dead kings or heroes, which later evolved into idol worship. This is a deeply insightful passage that reflects on how something that began as innocent remembrance degenerated into false religion. And this custom can absolutely be linked with many ancient cultures. Okay? Wisdom of Solomon 14 verses 15 through 17. A father grieved the loss of a beloved son. A person of high rank makes an image of him. All right, just like Serapis Christus, Caesar Borgia, which is today's so-called white Jesus. It says he honors the dead with ceremonies and rituals. Over time, this private remembrance becomes public worship. Eventually, the image is called a god. All right, verse 16 talks about how it became a law among the people that images were worshipped at the commandment of kings. Verse 18 through 21 talks about artistic skills. It plays a big role. People were amazed by how lifelike the image looked. The beauty of a statue persuaded people to worship the person, not just remember them. Flattery of rulers led to deification of men. All right, men serve calamity or tyranny as gods. This is what's happening today. All right. It says historical connections to this custom. Ancient Egypt, pharaohs were deified after death and often worshipped as gods even during life. Statues of pharaohs were placed in temples, ceremonies, and offerings were made to them. And what was Jake doing? They were among the Egyptians, living like the Egyptians. And this is how Jake does Tupac, man. Tupac, that Jake worships Tupac, man. Biggie. Okay, some pharaohs, and I know those are low level, but that they're literal gods amongst Jake. Okay, white Jesus. It says some pharaohs like Ramses built statues of himself proclaiming divinity. Trump is talking about doing that. It says in Mesopotamia, Sumer, Babel, Assyria, it says kings and great rulers were often honored with cult statues after death. Nimrod, a mighty hunter, was likely mythologized and worshipped in later Mesopotamian culture. Okay. It says, in some traditions, Tammuz, a dying and rising god, that's your Jesus Christ, as a matter of fact, it comes out of ancient Babylon, have originated, all right, as a defied mortal king. In Greece and Rome, Greek heroes like Hercules were mortal men defied after death. Roman emperors were declared as gods by the Senate after death. Temples were built and sacrifices were offered to the emperor's image. All right. This practice is exactly what Wisdom of Solomon 14 criticizes: flattery, art, politics, creating gods for men. And again, this is happening in this day on many levels. China, Africa, and indigenous culture. So all of these heathenistic cultures, Jake, who was given a God to worship, given a righteous way to follow, threw that away and started doing this. And as a result, this is what it led to. Let's get Wisdom of Solomon, right? As you read the results of idolatry. All right, jump into verse 22. One thing led to another. It was not enough to be wrong about the knowledge of God. Again, they were proud giants, right? They lived in a state of evil warfare, but they were so ignorant that they called it peace. Okay. And again, when you look at how Eve was deceived, she was deceived into believing that chaos and foolishness and rebellion was better than peace. They murdered children in their initiation rituals, celebrated secret mysteries, and held wild ceremonial orgies with unnatural practices. They no longer kept their lives or their marriages pure. See? And this describes what? Romans, the first chapter. Let's get Romans 1. Let's get a little Romans 1 up in there. Okay, Romans 1. And this happened what? In the Roman Empire, where Jake what was known as Gentiles, heathen, for what? Bowing to idols, man. Romans 1 and 21, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. See that? Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, that which is then is now. Okay? And changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like unto corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and to creeping things. Okay, they made gods out of everything, but ignored, all right, the Most High God. Again, let's get Wisdom of Solomon, the 12th chapter, or the 13th chapter. Let's get Wisdom of Solomon, the 13th chapter. All right. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can get it here. Wisdom of Solomon. This is 14. Let's go to 13. Anyone foolishness of the foolishness of nature worship. Again, this is something that we are living amongst today. They worship the stars, the planets, the seasons, the sex act. Okay. This is what we are living amongst, but it has its roots. All right. And basically, because when you really, all right, keep it a buck, as they say in the world, right? The ways of the serpent were continued on the earth through the Hamites. Because the sons of Cain died off, the Hamites kept that legacy of wickedness in the earth. The Canaanites, you know, going all the way back to Nimrod, and they were the ones who kept that. And when the Greeks and Romans came in power, who did they go to get their system of worship? Ham. They were just getting back what belonged to them in the first place. But this is what it entails, and this is the world we live in today, and why it's so out of order, and why a true, all right, system of worship has to be put in place. A true government. People worship nature. They worship But they don't worship the one who created it. They have no respect for the order and how he wanted it to be ran. Anyone who does not know God is simply foolish. Such people look at the things around them and still fail to see the living God. They have studied things he made, but they have not recognized the one who made them. Instead, they suppose that the gods who rule the world are fire or wind or the storm or circling stars or rush of water or heavenly bodies. People were so delighted with the beauty of these things that they thought they must be gods. The orgasm, you have an orgasm, you just like this is God. The heathen worshipped it, and Jake fell into these practices, man. But they should have realized that these things have a master, and that he is much greater than all of them, for he is the creator of beauty, and he created them. Since people are amazed at the power of these things, how they behave, they ought to learn, all right, from them that their maker is far more powerful. When we realize how vast and beautiful the creation is, we are learning about the creator at the same time. You can look at the functions in nature and you get an insight on the mind of the Lord, man. The law, statutes, and commandments gave us an insight into the mind of the Lord, man. Okay? And again, man fell into worship of the nature over the creator. All right. In particular, the holy seed. Okay. Romans 1:21. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. This is Jake in the Roman captivity. The fourth beast in Daniel the 7th chapter, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like unto corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Okay. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanliness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. See, and Solomon, as Wisdom of Solomon 13:14, is giving you insight into the atmosphere of what, you know, the sons of God got into, the sons of Ham, and those wicked demonic, you know, ways that they rule, man, those demonic customs and their origin. Okay. Let's go back to Romans 1. All right. Romans 1:24. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanliness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, who worshiped and served the creature more than the creator, who was blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use of that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust towards one another, men with men, working that which is unseemly. As a matter of fact, let's ask him. Let's see, can Wisdom of Solomon 14 be linked with Romans 1? Let's see what he says. Yes. Wisdom of Solomon and Romans 1 are closely linked both in theme and structure. In fact, many scholars believe Paul's argument in Romans 1:18-32 directly echoes or builds upon Wisdom of Solomon. Wow, I never knew that. Especially 13 and 14. Well, hey. All right. Because we're the real scholars, man. All right. We put this together, but again, as you can see here, okay, many scholars are linking it. Okay. Wow. Yeah, of course Paul would have been, would have had been familiar with the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter. Of course. Of course. We'll get into that, but let's just read through it here in Romans 1. Very interesting. It sounds just like it. All right. We'll show you. We'll show you as we finish Wisdom of Solomon at 14. So you should be, have the understanding, be equipped with the understanding to throw away the fallen angel rhetoric. Okay, throw that in the trash, like that guy Will Mills say, pack it up, pack them giants up, man. Okay, it says Romans 1:24. Yep, the women, they're being studs. I mean, this is the very world we're living in today. So pre-flood behavior is directly tied to pre-fire behavior, man. Okay? Because it says, likewise, the men leaving the natural use of the woman burned in their lust towards one another, men with men. They did not like to retain God in their knowledge, so he gave them over to a reprobate mind, being filled with unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetous, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, backbiters, haters of God, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. See that? Without natural affection, covenant breakers. And again, as we read Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter, right? That's the result of adultery. Okay? Verse 23, they murdered children in their initiation rituals, celebrated secret mysteries, and held wild ceremonial orgies with unnatural practices. This is the very world we live in today. Diddy, this is the Diddy party. Okay? They no longer kept their lives or marriages pure. A man might kill another by an act of treachery or cause him grief by committing adultery with his wife. Again, the sons of God, okay, fell. Okay? Diddy is like a bully or a tyrant, using, money and sex and drugs to be God over people. Everything was a complete riot of bloody murder, robbery, deceit, corruption, faithlessness, disorder, falsehood, harassment of innocent people. Okay, he who separates himself from evil makes himself a prey. Ingratitude, moral decay, sexual perversion, broken marriages, adultery, and immorality. Is not that what we are living in right now? So like the elder came to the conclusion in this video, pre-flood conditions and pre-fire conditions, which the fire is coming, pursuant to 2 Peter. Let's get that. 2 Peter 3:8 or 3 and let's see here. 5, for this they are willing and ignorant, that by the word of God the heavens of old and the earth standing out of water and in water, whereby the world that was then being overflow of water perished. But the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, all right, reserved unto fire against the judgment and perdition of ungodly men. So that fire is coming on earth. See that? So you had the flood, and then you had the fire that's promised. Okay, it was water then, and it's fire next. All right, and that's prophecy. Okay, so let's go back here. It says, harassment of innocent people, Wisdom of Solomon 14 and 26. Ingratitude, moral decay. Let's look up the word ingratitude. Okay. Lack of gratitude, ungratefulness, thanklessness, lack of gratitude, lack of appreciation. This is the world we live in, man. Okay. No respect for the elderly. These YNs are just completely high-minded, disobedient, innocent people who are harassed. All right. Good men are, cheated, used, abused. Right. So this is what we see: corruption, faithlessness, murder, robbery, deceit. Okay, you go to certain parts of the world, especially here in America, your car window just get bust out. Nigga will bust in your car because he saw a charger just to take the charger. It's like, bro. Okay. Harassment of innocent people, ingratitude, moral decay, sexual perversion, broken marriages, adultery, and immorality. The worship of idols whose names should never be spoken is the end, all right, the beginning, the end, and the cause of every evil. Okay? People who worship them lose control of themselves in ecstasy. What is ecstasy? So look up the word ecstasy. We ain't talking about the drug, but what is that drug supposedly used to do? All right, open you up to want to do lewd acts. Okay. It says an overwhelming feeling of great happiness, joyful, or excitement, bliss, cloud nine, euphoria. So they were probably doing certain drugs, man. Okay. Let's see here. Joy, basically, you're on top of the world. You got money, you got drugs, you got food, you got wine. See, people who worship these idols lose control of themselves in ecstasy. And this is what happened in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay? Let's get it here. Hold up. Genesis 6 and 2. The sons of God saw beautiful women, and they took any they wanted as their wives. Then the Lord says, so basically you get the mindset that they weren't focused, man. Because again, there was an order given unto these men under Adam to keep the righteous way. But again, this is what the sin of Adam led to. Okay. So they just started to go off. They lost themselves in that ecstasy. Genesis 6 and 3. And the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they are only mortal flesh. Again, this was humans. Eating, drinking, being merry is associated with the flesh. Okay. Jake got mingled among the heathen and lost his way. Okay. The harassment of innocent people. Again, one of the words for giants, Napayal, is a tyrant or a bully. Okay. So harassment of innocent people, ingratitude, moral decay, sexual perversion, broken marriages, adultery, immorality, the same thing we see today. The worship of idols whose names should never be spoken is the beginning and the end and the cause and result of every evil. People who worship them lose themselves in ecstasy or pass off lies as prophecies, man. And you see our people today on the internet, all right, in these TikTok videos, pointing at the screen, going all the way off, tripping. Okay, passing off lies as prophecies, man. Okay, telling you the Bible was stole from the 42, the 10 Commandments were stole from the 42 laws of Mayat, which is not 42 laws, it's 42 negative confessions that in the afterworld, you walk down this hall with this hawk-headed god. I forget his name. The hawk-headed god, one of the gods of Egypt. And then you go before this god, the gods, and basically you have 42 negative confessions. And if you broke any of those confessions when you was on earth, which one of them was not to, it's only 7 that are in, or it's about 6 or 7 that are in line with the 10 Commandments. But again, in each Eastern culture, they had laws. All right. A lot of them had laws, and not to kill or steal was in many ancient laws, to honor your parents. That's in many ancient, all right, systems of rule. But again, well, what's their law on laying with your woman on her cycle? What's the law on homosexuality when you go to Egypt? What's the law, all right, on the sacrifice? What's clean to eat? What's not clean to eat? And you'll see that Egypt and the ways of the Holy Scriptures are vastly separate. But what happens during the time of the 42 negative confessions, if you're guilty of any of those confessions, you confess to being guilty to one of them, then this female goddess eats your ass and devours you, and you eternally, swallowed by this female god. You think I'm making that look it up? As a matter of fact, the Bible was stolen from the 42. What happens? See if I'm making it up. See if Chat GPT know. If you are guilty of breaking one of the 42 negative confessions in Ma'at. In the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at, also called the Declarations of Innocence, were a part of ancient Egyptian religion. And it wasn't like a Egypt-wide thing. Certain regions in Egypt practice these things. It says, especially associated with the afterlife judgment scene described in the Book of the Dead. Here's what happens if someone is guilty of breaking one or more. If you are found guilty of violating one or more of the 42 confessions, you are declared unjustified. The soul would not be declared Ma'at Keru, meaning true voice. This means you failed the judgment in the hall of Ma'at. Anubis, that's that god. So this is the madness, Jake. When you see Shaka Amos, this is what he's into. Okay, these hawk head gods. Okay, King Rootin' Tootin', I remember that from the Chickmunks. It says, Anubis weighs your heart on a scale against the feather of Ma'at. It says, if the heart is heavier, it means guilt, compromised by sin, lies, or injustice. You are devoured by Ammit. If you fail the test, your heart is thrown to Ammit, a terrifying creature that is part lion, hippo, and crocodile. Ammit devours the heart, soul, and the soul is destroyed forever. This is called the second death, no after. And this is what Jake is tying to the Bible in their own way. Okay, in their own way. Okay, admit. Let's look up admit. God damn, hippo god. So the Bible never stole from this madness. Hold up. Hell no. I gotta see this nigga here. Imagine this nigga just eat your ass because you broke one of those commandments. $650. Hell no. Hold up. I don't want to. I just want to see a picture. I ain't trying to. Yeah. This is what Jake is into. And see, the sons of God have been prophesying of the judgment day, and a lot of these heathen made their own versions of those stories, man. That the leaders were, and everything got corrupted, man. Okay. Again, they passed down. All right, Wisdom of Solomon 14 and 29. They tell lies under oath. All right, let's start at 28. People who worship these idols lose control of themselves in ecstasy. or pass off lies as prophecies, or live wickedly, or break their own word without hesitation. This is the world we live in. People are just passing down myths and lies as prophecies, man. Okay? Ungodly. They tell lies under oath and expect no punishment because the idols they put their trust in are lifeless. So because if you trust in a lifeless idol, you don't live by any means of fear. Okay? There's no moral principle or standard to these idols and gods. Okay? But punishment will finally catch up with them for two reasons. First, they were in error by God when they worshiped idols. And second, they had so little regard for holiness that they made false statements to deceive people. When unrighteous people commit sin, they will be hunted down, not by the power of whatever they swear by, but by the punishment that sinners deserve. And again, it's all tied, okay, to the beginning of bowing to idols, man, which again, this is what happened in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay, this is what led to the flood. Okay, and Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and we hope to be in the stead of Noah before the day of fire. So hopefully I was edified. On to the next. Shalom.